staged masterclasses, demonstrations and workshops. We offer mentoring. We also have organised a number of visits to potteries and museums in this country and abroad to study pottery. In April, I shall take a second group to Korea. As I said, I'm sorry I'll be telling you things that you know, but that's inevitable with the subject of this talk and the two bodies of knowledge present in this group. The one thing we have in common is plastic media. That, however, differs significantly in the unique qualities of zisha. Here are images of typical UK clay pits, some of which are vast. In the UK, we have abundant supplies of clay of considerable variety, from low-firing red clays to high-firing kaolin and fire clay types. Clays are sometimes dug by individual potters, but most small-scale potters buy clay ready to use. Industrial or factory production will either blend, clean and process their clays or buy them in. In the past, those blending processes and recipes for bodies were closely guarded secrets. Espionage in the ceramics industry was rife in the past. The right bottom photograph is a Victorian Stoke-on-Trent. Please note the large pot bank and the massive clay pit immediately in front of it. This is this photograph here, and this is a clay pit. It's also a spoil pit now. Zisha, or purple sand clay, comes in a variety of colours, mostly natural, but also stained. Some, particularly from the old mine, are very expensive, if not impossible to obtain. There is a black clay, fired for lengthy periods at low temperatures. This contracts and puckers and is particularly sore. About 50% of that production suffers from firing faults. Connoisseurs will buy not only because of the reputation of the maker, but because of the body from which the pot is made. Now, the iron content in the body varies considerably. We saw a clay and the chap was telling us that it was something like 56% iron. And when fired, you could put a magnet on it and it would stick. But others are telling us that it's only 16% iron. So there's quite a variety of iron content in the clays you guys are using. Zisha has to be crushed and refined, unlike most of Western clays, which are readily plastic. Then zisha has a quality which Western bodies do not. Due to its unique properties, it is fired slightly porous, and this imbues the tea extra qualities in its infusion. To make sense of our methodologies and cultures in order to compare them, we need to know our histories. For in the UK, the relatively recent past has fashioned what we currently do. So this is going to be 2 lectures in one. The Industrial Revolution of the second half of the 18th century saw Britain as the most powerful nation in the world and with the largest and richest economy. This was due to a variety of reasons, included in which were that we developed new technologies, we were a seafaring nation, we had wealthy backers for the entrepreneurs, we had resources both physical and human, for instance coal, iron ore and clays. The movement of goods on the new canals, coupled with the mobility of the populace, aided it. We had those who were happy to exploit those resources. The morals and politics of that are not within the scope of this talk. What is important is that factories developed. Skills were honed, and through experimentation, better technology, for instance by Spode and Minton, coupled with a ready market, the quality became excellent and the price became affordable. This led to a decline, almost the disappearance, of the small-scale village potteries, which could neither compete on quality nor on price. Coal was the fuel, and this caused significant pollution. The illustration on the bottom right is of flint mill. One can still be seen at Cheddleton in Staffordshire, and the workers in such mills lived a short life, maybe only to 37 years old. They died of silica inhalation. So this was all part of the Industrial Revolution. On the top left, you can see a painting of the iron forges at Iron Gorge. No, what am I thinking about? Where Telford's Bridge is. Never mind, doesn't matter. It's in Shropshire. But you can see the kind of conditions these people were working in. And this poor chap here with his flinter, which was a constituent of the clay bodies that they were developing for whiteware, which wasn't porcelain. These two images, we can see a vast difference in the technology between China and that in the UK. This on the left is quintessentially English pottery. It's a slipware toft charger made in Stoke-on-Trent. And on the right is a Chinese bowl from the early Qing dynasty. These two items were made at similar historic times. In the UK, crafting became a thing for those with low incomes or where industry could not produce the item. We can still see this diversity in some things. For instance, bespoke tailoring or bench and handmade shoes, where now a high price is commanded when compared with the factory-made garments. I held this tough charger in the Hanley Museum. The maker's fingerprints were on the rear where he glazed it. I put my fingers into the marks, and that was an incredible experience. Slipware still has a strong following in the UK, Clive Bowen being a major maker. His jugs to the left, please note the similarity between these and those on the right, from Salisbury in the 13th and 14th century. They are 500 years apart. Clive Bowen is a pupil of Michael Leach, who is the son of Bernard Leach, and more of that later. We see here a jug by Thomas Wheeldon and a teapot by Josiah Wedgwood in the 1750s. Samuel Wheeldon apprenticed Josiah Wedgwood, who became probably the most famous of all English potters. These creamwares, that's the name of the type of pottery because the clay body was cream. They were based on cauliflowers and were made by Wheeldon and then also by Wedgwood in his own factory. Creamware was very popular, being white or cream and not red earthenware. And silica from the flint, which we saw earlier where those poor chaps died early, is a major ingredient of that particular creamware. This is sculptural work in clay in Jingzhen. Our United Kingdom culture is rich and varied, but when compared to that of our visitors here today, it is so different, but has taken a much shorter time to reach the sophistication that we see today. To say nothing of the vast history and diversity of that of China. Traditional craft methods and qualities are valued and may be seen in both cultures, but I believe they are more revered and respected as well as conserved in the Chinese culture. By that I do not mean old-fashioned. When visiting the old factory and sculpture factories in Jingzhen, one is immediately faced with diverse methodology and technique used to make copies of works from all dynasties as well as up to the minute so-called designer pieces. Skill levels are of such quality that several Western potters have their pots made for them there. So, I Ching teapots, such as this example, were imported along with tea, probably transported within the chests of tea. This on the left was gold mounted in Europe to avoid breakage or chipping. These pots were very expensive and only the very rich could afford them. Over 300 years old and still good. This is the one on the left, this one. Here, I Ching example. Recently sold at auction in the UK for £7,500 UK pounds. The two examples to the right are by the Ellis brothers, who came from Holland, where I Ching wares were being copied, and they went to work with John Dwight in London. Note the similarity, the gold mounts, and the periods. Definitely copies. John Dwight, Fulham, London, not far from here. New bodies and wares were developed all over the UK, not only in Stoke-on-Trent. Dwight patented his red clay body in 1684. This was in copy of the I Ching wares. Here is a tankard by John Dwight on the left. It's salt glazed, white stoneware with a silver rim. I personally have no idea of what's taught in the schools and colleges of China, so please forgive me if I'm telling you what you already know. 2,000 years ago, in the Han Dynasty, the first porcelains were made. The early discovery of mixing potency and kaolin to make porcelain really did make a significant difference in the wares of China and its prosperity. The development is well documented in the museums of both China and Korea. Two types have always been recognised, that of Xing, the white in the Tang Dynasty, and latterly made for 1,000 years in Jingdezhen, and that of Celadon, which is still made in Longhua. In 1693, the Ehlers brothers, whose work we saw on the previous slide, they set up their own pottery near the seam of clay near Stoke-on-Trent that John Dwight was using. They were making red teapots under licence from Dwight. There was a bit of difficult industrial stuff there because they went off and started doing this without his permission, and there was a big court case over it. Their wares were much admired, and for instance, Wedgwood himself wrote of their quality. They went bankrupt by 1700 due to their making methods, which were based on their silversmithing background. They essentially invented the slip casting process, and pots were often laboriously hinged and turned. Here we have a Meissen teapot. It's Botga ware, and it was made in around 1710, and it's clearly a copy of I Ching ware. Now note the date of this and the person who made it, because Botga was the European who discovered how to make porcelain. But that's another long story. Botga, along with others, developed high-firing red bodies emulating those of I Ching. Thinking of porcelain as pottery, it was not until the Medici of the 1580s from Florence in Italy, where glass was combined with clay, that we had a pseudo-porcelain in Europe. And the later efforts of Botga in the first decade of the 18th century that the West had a true porcelain. It was equally important for the development of porcelain and high-firing durable stonewares that the recipes for the bodies were coupled with appropriate technologies of kiln design. The methods of porcelain were not developed until 50 or so years later, and several factories were running by then, notably Worcester and Crown Derby, and there was the Chelsea factory, of course, in London, amongst others. So this came quite a bit after the development of those redwares. This is a dome-shaped I Ching ware teapot with a 6-lobe body by Gongchun, made in 1513. It's Ming Dynasty. The wares of Jingdezhen are a somewhat separate history to that of I Ching, and I Ching is really the centre of ceramics in China, and why we are here today. It's impossible to consider the development of Western tea culture without I Ching. Tea was drunk and became popular in the Tang Dynasty and was exported along the Silk Road. This spurred the production of finer tea wares in all cultures. Pottery has been made in the area of I Ching for 3,000 years. But the first examples of I Ching tea wares appear in the Song Dynasty and became popular in the Ming, where the skill of the potters and the use of zisha clay led to highly sought tea wares. That said, tea wares are not the only articles made from zisha. Zisha is also known as purple standard clay, nor is zisha the only clay used in ceramic production in I Ching. The coloured clay relief in the centre bottom pot is applied by hand. It's coloured clay applied to the body, and it's a joy to see when it's being done. Top right, the modelling skills of this master maker are impeccable. Large factories are producing storage and garden wares in abundance, and here on the bottom right we see part of a collection owned by the master above. So this gentleman here, whose name escapes me, he owns all these, some dating back to the Ming, and these were in fact water pots for the use in case of fire. And they're big, you know, these are massive things. And boy, would I like to own one of those. There are plenty of references to the beauty of fine zizha, clearly not requiring a glaze, and also to the qualities of enhancing the flavour of the tea. That said, a glaze called robin's egg is sometimes used, and it's beautiful. UK robin eggs are of a different hue. The difference between the ceramics of the two cultures was vastly different in the Tang and the Song eras. This is very apparent. On the left are pots from the UK being made in the same period as the two on the right were being made in China. And it's easy to attribute the quality of Chinese wares to the quality of clay to be found. But of equal importance is the order in society and technology of kiln design, which could be controlled, the kiln atmosphere and the temperatures, and they gave high temperatures and they were even. The I Ching tea wares were in use in Europe at the end of the 17th century and were being copied both in form and in clays developed for the purpose, as we just seen, by the end of the 18th century. We can find examples of production in several European countries. The Turner example has a spout design to take a metal tube for a better and less vulnerable pour. That's this piece here. Now you can see the similarity between the I Ching pot on the right and that at Wedgwood when he was in partnership with Bentley on the left. It's a direct copy pretty well, and somebody else, Mayer, was also doing the same thing. And these are dark. For those English people here who don't know, some of the I Ching wares, if you're brewing a fermented tea, they go darker over use anyway. Here we have Wedgwood with his white basil from the 1780s and the 1800s. So he wasn't only making black and red teapots, but he was also making white ones. So the tea wares of this type were very expensive to buy, which is why they were copied, and ordinary people didn't drink tea. In fact, cider or small beer were the normal drinks. Small beer was slightly alcoholic from fermentation, and because the sugars from the grain had to be drawn out by infusion in hot water, the drink was sterile, and that was much safer to drink than water at those times. The teapot on the right, you can see, was made 100 years later, and it was black basalt ware. So this went on for a long time in the Wedgwood factory, and the cane design, surface design looking like cane, was very popular. So tea became very popular eventually with the upper classes. It was for a long time very expensive and was kept locked away in a tea safe. These were known as tea caddies. The interiors would often have the facility to mix two types of tea in a central bowl. Eventually it became cheap enough for the general population, and they would use a teapot known as a brown Betty. Here we have a brown Betty made from Etruria marl from Stoke-on-Trent. Etruria is an area in Stoke, and Stoke is the centre of pottery in the UK. This is glazed with a Rockingham glaze, which combines both iron and manganese, and it's in a definite allusion to the I Ching. You can see the process of slip casting. Strainer holes were absent. Sorry, you can see the process of slip casting, but strainer holes were absent in this method. If you cast a spout with a body, you can't have strainer holes. It's difficult to make, and so they used a sieve when pouring the tea. We know it was a tea strainer. Our visitors from I Ching may be interested to learn that leather drinking vessels were commonplace in England and had been in use since Neolithic times. From the Tudor period, leather jacks, or leather boots, to use the naval term, they were the norm. They were cheaper than glass or pewter and less vulnerable than pottery. The leather tablets were copied in pottery by a variety of factories. This one to the right was made by Dalton in London and is salt glazed. In the UK, we have a very different attitude to tea from that which our guests have. Our tea in England is usually black fermented tea. It's often very strong and sugared, as well as quietened with milk. It's unusual for people to drink green tea, but tea stains from a variety of leaves or flowers are becoming quite popular. Very few Westerners indulge in fine teas without sugar or milk, and even fewer ritualise tea drinking. Teas like Silver Needle or Long Jing from Dragonwell are unknown, and unfortunately I'm the only person I know who uses I Ching wares. My interest in I Ching is due to teaching. The quality of manufacture and variety of design are both of considerable value for students of ceramics. That diversity and originality of design is very attractive to me and has led me to acquire many pieces. These are my I Ching teapots. There are significant differences in making techniques. In the West, most ceramic ware is made by casting runny clay in plaster moulds or by machine pressing. Only artisan ceramics, known as studio pottery, are made by hand or by throwing. Certainly the skill levels of those making by hand in I Ching are to be admired. The Industrial Revolution of the 1780s onward, which essentially began in Britain and saw the development of factory-made ceramics in the UK, resulted in smaller scale, localised production virtually disappearing, as I said before. On the left is an example of motto ware, which is still made in Devon today, and in the centre, an older example in honey lead-based glaze on white slip. On the right, a cider jar made by Isaac Button, a prolific country potter, early to mid-20th century, and it's of note that Isaac's business closed because he couldn't find a successor. These things are called puzzle jugs, and to drink the liquid in them, you had to suck on the spout. But because holes were around the outside, it would go on you unless you knew where to put your fingers to block the holes up. If you want to know more, come talk to me. Some regional wares continue to this day, notably motto ware, which we've just seen, and until 2005, Brannan's, which we see here. We in the UK do not have a hierarchical system of the quality of potters. The industry is represented by factory owners, and the industrial workers are unknown. The pottery industry declined during the 20th century and saw, by the 21st century, the closure of nearly all of the factories, the production of some of which was moved to the east and the Far East. A vibrant movement called the arts and crafts began in many European countries, and there were notable leaders. Within that time, and given there were exceptions to every rule, and the Martin brothers were a prime example of that, the four brothers produced by themselves quirky items for over 40 years in London. I've only ever seen 2 teapots by the Martin brothers, and that's one of them. I'd like to see more. I've never picked it up. I don't know where it is or who owns it, and it took quite a bit of trawling to find it. In this country, William Morris became the major protagonist and produced by hand a variety of wallpapers, fabrics, stained glass, and design work. The movement was intertwined with Art Nouveau and made a significant change to the taste of the public in general and to what was produced. The philosophy, politics, and general attitudes, particularly of those with money, did change significantly. Instead of the highly technical and precise wares of Victorian factories, those made by hand became valued. Those persons were also closely allied to a movement to improve the living and working conditions of the poor. Considering the machine to be the root cause of all repetitive and mundane evils, some of the protagonists of this movement turned entirely away from the use of machines and towards handcraft, which tended to concentrate the productions in the hands of sensitive but well-heeled patrons. This change is epitomised in the work of Morris Fabrics and the architect Bugin and the writer Ruskin, whose ideas can be seen in those of Bernard Leach in ceramics. As I said, society figures collected the wares and those of China and Japan. This is one of Bernard Leach's most famous designs, called Leaping Salmon. Around this time in the early 20th century, courses began to develop which specialised in pottery as well as other crafts. And when I say courses, I mean courses in home college to teach people how to make pots. This was the start of something special for the UK. It saw the establishment of small-scale individuals or cooperative groups in the making of craft objects. Those early potters took on recent graduates and apprentices, and the thing began to boom. The general populace would begin to afford such items, and amongst those who understood, they were valued. At the same time, teacher educators promoted the value of craft for the development of a variety of skills. The craft was taught in schools. Much of the early studio wares were glazed in brown or buff glazes, and some thought these to be boring, and the notion of the brown pot, which was a derogatory term, was in use. Michael Cardew is one of the best known of Bernard Leach's pupils. Bernard stands out from his peers as he was a writer and a teacher, practically influencing middle and upper classes and educators. This mid to late 20th century era saw a boom in the number of British potters, and exceptional innovation took place. In my school, where I was educated, we had pottery teachers as well as those teaching painting, printmaking, millinery and textiles. I was very fortunate, but I was one of many. The route was then open to college for 3 or 4 years to learn how to become a specialist potter or an artist or a designer or a painter, etc. Those of exceptional talent could go on to a further course at the Royal College of Art. Setting up on one's own was not easy, but there was a crafts advisory service and people employed to assist in the design and construction of kilns, for instance. This vibrant time led to many UK potters emigrating to establish similar movements in the UK, Australia, etc. Michael, this is Michael Cardew, went to Abuja in the 1950s. This 20th century development led to the UK being at the pinnacle of ceramics innovation. The popularity of handcrafted ceramics led to factories copying the types and surfaces of handcrafted wares. It's easy to be critical of the quality of the early pot, as often they were produced without the sophisticated technology we currently use. Clays would have been dug locally, and the potter, the studio potter, was in charge of his whole process, or her whole process, because there were many eminent ladies as well as gentlemen. In the centre of these images is a salt-glazed stoneware model of a potter's wheel, and that wheel was designed by Bernard Leach. I own one of these made by Ian, and I'm very pleased with it. Leach really was a pioneer. This wheel was very popular since, although it may have been possible to buy an industrial wheel in the 1920s, they were large and unsuited to studio work, whereas a foot-powered wheel was ideal. Over the last 10 to 15 years, the decline in the number of colleges offering courses in the arts and particularly the crafts has led to a decline in the understanding and desirability of crafts. Clay is rare in schools today, but without that experience of hands on the clay, the market for handmade pottery has been hit. Those children who had previously had the experience of craft in school benefited from the ready availability of affordable evening and weekend courses where they could continue their experiences. Alas, these have been cut considerably over the last 20 years. Those persons were and are the prime buyers of studio ceramics. There's still a thriving market for courses run by individual potters for those with leisure, time and spare cash. Here we see on the left Colin Pearson, pot with the wings, typical of his later work. Colin worked for a time with David Leach, who's Bernard Leach's oldest son. In the centre is, on the right, is a pot by Ian Godfrey, whose carved unglazed constructions are clearly based on hand tomb pottery. And these are a delight. I was fortunate to know him before he died. He was a lovely man. This teapot, and I don't know who made it, but I chose it because of what it is, and it's vastly different from those of I Ching. Although it's well made, it does not have the distinct care in construction epitomised in I Ching. Instead, it has a sense of fun, liveliness and individuality, which is much sought in Western artwork. The notion of innovation and originality underpins what is and was taught in colleges. This leads to an individual approach, and thus individuals may be recognised from their work. It is, and was, from the late 20th century, unusual to find a course where making skills came first, apart from studios who had apprentices where the making of repetitive items was core. That said, those potters with whom I speak and of a similar maturity bemoan the lack of throwing ability in the new graduates and the lack of technical understanding. We feel those aspects suffer from an overemphasis on creativity. Skill, so clearly evident in I Ching, is far less important in the UK. The term studio potter is one which implies that the potter personally produces the ceramic over the whole process, maybe with bought-in clay and materials. Here we have the Leach pottery standard ware, usually unsigned but stamped. It could be made by any one of the potters there. And on the right is an individual piece by Bernard. It's important to understand that the making of studio or individual ceramics in the UK falls essentially into two areas. That of the domestic, that is to say, a useful pot, and that of art objects. There is an ongoing debate, well over 100 years old, that all clay work is art. If made by hand, it's art. And if it's made by machine, it's not art. This is the heart of the argument of the fine art elite, whose protagonists see crafted objects as inferior. The fact that paintings and sculptures are both crafted is totally ignored. Much work also falls into a variety of subgroups. There is the Leach tradition of Sino-European potters, essentially influenced by Leach's affinity to Japan. And Leach towers over others in that he had many notable apprentices and was a prodigious writer. The Central School produced ceramics with a rather more industrial design approach, which continues today. Camberwell, another college, along with others, taught the studio domestic approach. Ceramics is influenced by the major movements in art, and perhaps the best example of that is Peter Volkos, bottom left. He was an American. He works within the movement of abstract expressionism. In this country, people like Ruth Duckworth, who later went back to America, and Gordon Baldwin, they studied at the Central School in London, and they made or make sculptural pieces in an abstract modernist style. Just so you know, this is Peter Volkos, that's Ruth Duckworth in the studio, and this is Gordon Baldwin. In the UK, there's the Crafts Council, which promotes craft in general. The Craft Potters Association, of whom we have the chairman and various members today here. The Society of Designer Craftsmen, the Art Workers Guild, and a variety of regional groups like London Potters, who represent potters. Those groups put on shows, mentor members and encourage the understanding of the public. We have far fewer galleries exhibiting ceramics now than 20 years ago. The decline in those reflecting that of the decline in colleges offering ceramics. There was a thriving auction market, the very best auction houses selling studio ceramics at very high prices, but those have also declined. Why? The economic situation is one issue. The budgets for schools struggling to provide an ever-widening curriculum, and those budgets going to fund the desire for modern technology and information technology. Yeah. Two teapots by eminent UK potters associated with the American funk movement, where the article is less to do with function and more to do with the object itself. A recent TV programme where potters with some experience compete in a knockout contest has led to a greater interest in buyers, increased prices and more wishing to try it. The newspaper, or newspapers in fact, because I've read several articles about this, would have you believe that pottery is on a roll and that there are more opportunities. If you speak to potters, you may find a different opinion. This is the work of Julian Lowndes. Julian died in 2010. The work is perhaps the most difficult to understand, being an amalgam of many objects and forms. What interests me is her work within the materials we use as potters, everyday refractories, camphor, glaze and slip, alluding to the process of the ceramic and the dissembly of that process. Here we witness where the clay becomes sculpture, evocative of the potter's processes. Installations are another branch that we see in UK and Europe and America. Care to me and Edmund de Waal, these two examples here. These works are using ceramic objects as sculpture within an environment. Practitioners often create, especially for a particular site, hence the word installation. Here, quickly, we can see a variety of pots made by well-respected UK ceramists. There have been notable teapot makers, Derek Ems and Geoffrey Whiting, both of whom taught, and I was fortunate to have been taught by Ems, and I knew him from the Society of Design and Craftsmen. Mick Castle is a mighty figure in studio domestic wares, generous and well-liked man, sadly deceased. These are salt-glazed jugs about this big. Every time I visited him and wished to buy one of these, he would say, "Oh, they're all required for my show." So I never owned them. Wally Keeler makes thrown and altered ware. Note the strong influence of Eaching crabstock teapots in the left example. On the right is a salt-glazed teapot, showing Wally's interest in tin cans. Perhaps the best known of recent ceramists in the UK is Kate Malone. She makes work of normal and of monumental size. I'm aware that there's a strong group of engravers of ceramics in I Ching. This is a very old and proud tradition in China. In Britain, the tradition of working with letterforms on clay has nearly always been done with slip. Carving's rare. Mary Rondrash was perhaps the most notable of recent commemorative ware makers. This is her work. She died 3-4 years ago. Amazing lady. Prue is a modern exponent of motto ware, which we saw earlier. She's an excellent hand in letter application by this tricky method using runny clay. I can't do that. Well, I can, but it's a mess when I do it. Alan Kager Smith is another lovely man. in tin-glazed earthenware, and in the use of brush decoration using lustre. It's a joy to watch him work. Two very different teapot makers. John Pollock's on the left has developed very bright coloured slips. This is earthenware, with which he decorates primarily earthenware teapots. Jeremy works with salt put into the kiln when very hot, which combines with the silica in the clay to make salt glaze in the same way that John Dwight did all those years ago. These tools, which you guys are familiar with and perhaps the English people present aren't, they're used in the making of I Ching teapots, and they're quite different from the ones we use in the West. The significant differences in the wares of I Ching and the UK are the consistency in form, size, thickness, weight and additions. So much so that the drain holes are uniform in shape and size. The spout and handle are exactly opposite. The lid not only fits, but it's an exact fit. I can pick one of my I Ching teapots up by the knob and the body still stays attached. There is peer judging in I Ching, allowing skill levels to be recognised. The making methods are, for those of the best quality, entirely by hand. Press moulds may be used by those less skilled and by those working in factories, as well as casting, but essentially the process is still by hand. The process, whilst fascinating, will be seen in the West as too laborious, and I would not expect UK youngsters to want to learn it, fascinating as it is. For those of us college educated in the West and working from the 60s and 70s, truth to materials was the big thing. Not to abuse, dominate or make them sterile. Warren Mackenzie, an American who's recently died, sadly. Why? Lots of potters are lovely guys, and Warren Mackenzie was just another one, nice chap. He was a pupil of Bernard Leach, and he said he was trying to imbue his students with a kind of aesthetic integrity and a devotion to material. This led to an approach that was looser, more akin to the Japanese Zen aesthetic. It was also seen by many as an excuse for shoddy practice. A slab roller or rolling pin and guides are the most commonly used methods to flatten sheets of clay, as opposed to the I Ching flogger. You'll see an image of that in a moment. Loop tools and wooden throwing tools are readily bought rather. Here I'm throwing at a craft fair in the 70s. These were popular, and some still happen. They were good sources for buyers. I had a bit of hair then. Mr. Li Junji, did I say that right?
Yeah.
Oh. If we doubt the international integrity of these wonderful I Ching wares, Mr. Li Junji has recently been awarded the Coubertin Medal. Li was awarded the honour in recognition of his contribution to promoting the Olympic values through his ceramic works. We met him in 2017. He's a very convivial man, and we noted that he's an actor and also a martial arts practitioner. This is the group of London potters visiting I Ching in 2018 in Mr. Fenn's studio. And that's all I've got to tell you. I hope you're not too bored, and now you can wake up. Thank you very much. Yes.
Were the imitations, the European imitations of the I Ching ware, were they slabbed up, were they thrown?
I believe, well, the Ellis brothers, we know that they were slip cast.
Okay.
Nobody did slip casting before them. I mean, what a thing to invent.
Yeah.
The others, I would imagine they were thrown. Yes, they weren't made by hand. You're going to see the process in a minute. Someone's going to demonstrate. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I've tried it. You guys are great. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for your wonderful talk. Next, let's welcome Jeremy Nicholas, the chair of the Property Porters Association, to give us another one. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to talk about the Craft Potters Association. What I'd like to do is to say something about who we are, what our aims and objectives are, and what it is that we do to fulfill those aims and objectives. I'd then like to show some images from our archives. Last year was our 60th anniversary, that illustrate the path we've taken since our foundation in 1958. And on the screen are, on the right, our current logo, and a logo from very early on in our history. I'll conclude with a few words about our plans for the future, and in particular, the exciting collaboration that we're discussing with our colleagues, yourselves, at eShane. Okay, in this and the next two slides, or along the bottom of the slides, I put some images of our current members' work. It's there really to show the variety of work that our members do and the types and styles of work that we as an organisation represent. So first of all, who we are. Well, we're a national organisation owned by our members and run by a management council elected from and by its members. And we employ a staff group at our headquarters in Great Russell Street, our gallery, which some of you visited yesterday, on Wednesday, in Great Russell Street, to manage a set of services and activities. I should say, before we go on to this, roughly about our numbers and our membership. We have two types of membership, two levels of membership. Our full members who own the organisation and who have sort of voting rights when it comes to the elections and electing our council. We have about 300 full members who gain admittance through a rigorous process of selection for the quality of their work. And those are the full members. And apart from those, we have about coming up to approaching 1,000 associates who may be professionals who haven't decided to associate themselves with us in quite such a full way, but mainly are recreational makers, potters, amateurs, enthusiasts, collectors, and other people generally interested in the world of ceramics. Okay, our aims and objectives of our organisation, very broadly, to provide services to our members to help them develop and sell their work, and to promote the field of studio ceramics as a whole to the general public, and to raise awareness of what excellence in ceramics means. So now, the kind of things that we do in pursuit of those aims and objectives. Well, we run the Contemporary Ceramics Centre, which is our gallery and shop, opposite the British Museum in Great Russell Street. We organise talks, demonstrations and other educational events. We organise selling fairs for our members as part of our service to them. We publish the international magazine Ceramic Review, and we organise the International Ceramics Fair, Ceramic Art London. Okay, so just to go a little bit more deeply into those various activities. First of all, the Contemporary Ceramics Centre. It's our headquarters. It's where we give the opportunity to our members to sell their work. It has basically three objectives. One is, as I say, it's a service to our members, so they can sell their work at a central London venue. But it's also a place where, in a sense, we educate, or we have the potential to educate the public about what contemporary ceramics is all about. And thirdly, of course, and very importantly, it generates an income for ourselves as an organisation. The venue itself is at the front of the venue, in the picture on the top left, top right, sorry, is the kind of the front, which stocks our members' work, which people can buy and take away and sell. So, which you sell the work, people can buy and take away. And at the back, there's a gallery space where we hold monthly solo or group exhibitions. These are predominantly and mainly of our members, but we also like to have exhibitions of makers from overseas whose work is maybe unfamiliar to our normal audience, and sometimes quite challenging to our normal audience. And because of that, those exhibitions we seek sponsorship for. And at the bottom there are work of two recent such exhibitions. On the left of an Italian artist called Paolo Paranotto, and on the right a French artist, Sophie Parr. Both those exhibitions are very successful, but they both generated a certain amount of anxiety from some of our more traditional buyers. But that's what we're all about. We're here to educate as well as to satisfy our public. One of the other things we do, as I was saying, was we organise fairs, talks and demonstrations for our members. Currently we hold 2 a year in Oxford and in York, and the 2 illustrations are of these fairs. Members apply for a stand, they are designed from the start of the presentation design.
我们刚刚从这个主会场出来啊，然后我们现在可以分别看一下，正好得空来看一下他们的这些艺术品。这些是刚刚跟我们一起参会的中国的紫星艺术家们所带来的这种紫砂壶啊，可以看一下有作者介绍及这个作品的名字。为什么说紫砂壶是文人雅客所喜欢的？因为它其实是一种，我们可以说它其实算是一种艺术品哈。可以看这个上面写的明和明哈，它经常会把一些比如说诗文啊，或者说非常高雅的一些字句，以及简单的一些画刻在上面。我们还可以看看这边，它这上面有竹。梅兰竹菊当中的竹，然后跟这个壶融为一体。我们刚刚在看现场的展示的时候，说英国的这个和紫砂壶都同样有那个竹节那个构造哈。然后这是一个关于竹的，这个它刻画的上面这种莺燕纷飞的这种感觉。像这种紫砂艺术家，他们对于书法以及绘画也是需要有非常深厚的功底的。哇， 这个好有特点啊！大家有没有觉得这像个蛋壳一般的？这点像个蛋壳。然后这个我们平时没有看过这种形状的哈，非常有特色。而且它这个有点镶金的那种姿势。看这一幅，这一幅是刻画了一个山水图，是有点那个青山作背，然后云雾缭绕，前面是松柏这种。这个湖就是比较小型的这个。那这里刻了一个吉，这个下面是什么字？我们看它会有分为不同的颜色，它就都叫做紫砂，但是紫砂泥它是有很多不同的颜色。这个就是有一点竹节的那种构造的，包括这个把手，然后前面那个嘴这个地方，还有上面这个凸起，都是有点竹节的这种感觉。这个呢就比较现代。这几个圈圈有点竖的那个年轮的，这个呢非常好玩，大家可以看啊。我觉得这个是非常可爱的一个，它跟这个前面可能是一个龙的这么一个结构，整个这种壶的茶体感觉比其他的更为光泽，更有光泽感。然后它前面的这个出口呢，正好是这个茶壶的这个做这里。我觉得这个配色超漂亮，上面这两个配起来超好看。它这叫诗舞四方，这是个狮子。我们的很多艺术作品上面，就比如说狮子啊、龙啊，作为其中的元素是非常常见的。看降龙虎，刚说到龙，它就出来了。看这个就是这个把手上面都是一个龙，然后跟这个融为一体，像一个龙在吐舌头一般。然后这个是那种有点像那个如意祥云啊。这个为什么可以说紫砂壶可以当做艺术品呢？因为每一个上面是一个壶的基础构造，但是在这个之上呢，又有很多的这种艺术特色和设计。这个壶是我们平时很不常见的，因为我们平时所看的这种紫砂壶都是光滑的表面，然后在壶体上面除了刻字刻画之外，没有太多的这种处理。那这个呢，就是直接在这个壶的上面做的这种凸起的这种处理，直接在材质上面有一些处理，非常的好看。哦，我好喜欢，也好喜欢这个。看这个作品叫做《秋雀》，大家看像一个，这是个南瓜吗？而且颜色特别的特殊哈，非常有特点。这有点墨绿色。再拿一下，哇，好漂亮，太漂亮了。这个好可爱，它这个拿的哈，这样的，我觉得这更像艺术品了。它这一个的实用性就没有那么强。刀叉剑戟的这种构造。 看这种龙和鱼穿在一起，还有只鱼尾。像鱼也是比较常用的，我们绘画以及艺术作品当中的一些元素。因为我们经常说年年有余啊，它鱼就象征了一种，好像是一种豁达或者说富余的这么一种状态啊。大家来看一下这个的形状非常有特点，它是方形的。哦，这是个盖子。我们看这个盖子，其实上面可能是如意。吓死我了。对，上面是如意。哦，这个，哦，这不是盖子，这是整一个壶。看啊，这个是也是个壶，然后这个体看起来非常的矮啊，然后上面是一个如意的形状，它上面这个也是一个盖子。好，那我们今天看到的基本就这些了。然后这个也是响应了“带入美丽中国”的这么一个交流峰会啊，是中英陶瓷艺术文化交流峰会。那也是，因为我们现场看到了很多这个中国的陶瓷艺术家来这边学习交流。然后最开始的时候，我们也看到了一个英国的老师在那讲述整个英国的陶瓷的艺术史，然后同时呢也介绍了很多有名的英国的陶瓷陶刻家，然后还有很多的作品的呈现。那好的，这一期的节目就是这样，感谢大家的陪伴与收看，我们下期再见，拜拜。